Flaws, teamwork, and striking silhouettes. Here are 5 things essential to great character design. As gaming has evolved, so have the digital avatars that we control. These days, we're less satisfied by the thought of spending 10 hours controlling monosyllabic, anvil-jawed heroes. And to truly engage with the game, NPCs have to offer more meaningful choices than kill or rescue. In this video, we'll be looking at things game designers do to make characters really resonate with us, and we'll be exploring the challenges that come with making a whole new hero from scratch, often without an actor to bring them to life, as well as the additional problems that can occur when you do have an actor to motion capture. And as ever, please remember to hit that like button if you learn anything new, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one every single week. Here are 5 things essential to making brilliant video game characters. It might sound obvious, but the first thing to focus on is the game itself. The best characters are a seamless part of the worlds they inhabit. Even the best written character will be forgotten if the game they're in is no fun to play, so designers usually start with the foundations of the game and find the right characters to inhabit that world later on. In an article on Gamasutra, Alan Bradley talks to developers from Obsidian Entertainment and Guerrilla Games to find out exactly what makes a great video game character. And while the specifics do tend to vary, they agree that the framework of the game always comes first. Chris Avallone, a veteran designer and writer who's worked on games like Planescape Torment and Divinity Original Sin 2, uses Yes Man from Fallout New Vegas as an example of how this process can work. Yes Man wasn't created to solve a specific problem in the game, but his character was born out of his usefulness and his design. As an indestructible robot, Yes Man can still hand out quests, even if you alienate every other faction in the game, something you absolutely want to be able to do because this is a Bethesda game. This context helps define who Yes Man is as a character. It's one example of many, and it's a vivid illustration of how a cool character can evolve from the needs or constraints of a game's system.
Sorry if that was getting boring.
Now, we tend to focus purely on PC titles on this channel, but it's worth throwing in a quote from game design legend Shigeru Miyamoto. In a Polygon interview on the subject, he says that experiences always come before characters. We approach it not from what is the next character, but what is there within the structure of video games from which we can create new play structures. Perhaps the best example of this comes from an old episode of Iwata Asks. This revealed that the specs for the first Legend of Zelda game were discovered in an ancient design doc labelled Adventure Mario, meaning that Link, one of the most iconic characters in gaming, was only added to the game after it was designed. It doesn't make him any less important, it just means he's a better fit for the world he inhabits. On a related note, when we think of how characters come to life, we assume that it's all down to the writer. But game design is usually a collaborative process, and it's incredibly difficult to create a character from scratch when you're working alone. In the same Gamasutra article, Avallone explains that once the support structures are in place that define who a character is, things like class or race or abilities, then all of that information goes to a concept artist whose job it is to translate that info into something visual. The more an artist knows about a character at this stage, the more effective the final design will be. Of course, not all developers work in the same way. Kari Patel, the narrative co-lead on Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, suggests a different approach for character design. The writer and the lead designers establish high-level goals together, and once those goals are established, the writer generally takes ownership of establishing the characterization and writing the dialogue.
Kith trespasses in the goddess's maw? But how?
Things begin with a design goal. Things like, is this character going to assist the player? If so, what's their class? Are they a quest giver? And so on. These elements help establish what the character archetype is, and many of their personality traits will flow from this. It's an iterative process. If an aspect of a character isn't clear enough, or the character's intention isn't clearly displayed, things will be tweaked until it all works. So basically, the character we recognize in a game doesn't exist until this point. They're merely a series of objectives and goals. This mix of a character's mechanical framework and the organic components is what makes them feel real. And it's here that the writers can take the archetypes I mentioned before and play with them, finding a unique starting point for each character. Dialogue, motivation, and interaction with the player all start here.
Don't read too much into it. You're not the only big thing happening around here. I'm in this for a lot of information, a little diplomacy, and plenty of target practice.
The best characters in games can be understood with a single glance. Something like physique can convey who a character is, and the best designed games can express this information in a way that every single player can understand. Take a game like Overwatch, for example. You can distinguish most of those characters by their silhouettes alone, even gleaning some information about their personalities and abilities. Even if you've got limited gaming experience, you'll immediately get a feel for how Tracer controls compared to, say, Reinhardt. That is good game design. On a similar note, the way a character stands can also tell you loads. This is something you see all the time in fighting games. Take a look at the character select screen in the best beat-em-ups, and the stances and poses will give you a strong sense of who each fighter is before you've even played with them. This level of distinction is particularly important for fighting games with huge rosters, which is why you can look at an image like this and instantly recognize all these characters from their color palettes alone. Again, that's brilliant, iconic game design.
Bow down before my psycho power.
Round 1. Fight!
Animation is another way designers can impart information without a character saying a single word. To use another Nintendo example, just look at how Luigi opens a door in Luigi's Mansion. You could be watching this for the first time and you'd still know what kind of hero Luigi is. Compare that with Claire in Resident Evil 2. She's still cautious, but with a notable degree of professionalism.
Anybody here?
And finally, here's how Kiryu from Yakuza opens a door, removing all doubt about what kind of character he is. And yes, I did just illustrate this point by talking about doors. Cool.
初めからグルだったわけだ。腐ってるぜ。
My previous entry was all about first impressions, and this one is about subverting them, or at least providing enough of a twist that characters don't seem stereotyped or predictable. In the same Gamasutra article, Avalone talks about Kriya from Knights of the Old Republic 2. She's the narrative backbone, and she provides a means to explain the underlying conflict of the game. But there's another reason she works so well. Kriya goes against everything we know about Star Wars. She subverts the Obi-Wan trope of the wise old Jedi Master, exploiting the player's previous knowledge to surprise and engage them. It's a cool touch and one that works because it plays on what we, as Star Wars fans, already expect from a character. We recognise Kriya as belonging to a certain archetype, and when she doesn't conform, we're forced to consider her motivation more deeply. Conversely, it can damage our experience when characters in a game do exactly what we expect them to do. Unless you're doing something clever and self-referential, it's a smart move to avoid stereotypes in your character design. The protagonists in Dead Island, for example, perform largely the same function as those in Left 4 Dead, but the chances are you remember the latter group far more vividly. And another way of doing this is by making your characters distinct. People remember HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic not just because of his vicious dialogue, but because he stands out against a crew of mainly humanoid characters. And again, the game plays with our expectations. After meeting T3, you might expect a protocol droid to join your team, recalling the classic R2 C3PO configuration. The fact that HK-47 couldn't be further away from this makes you appreciate him even more.
I only ask that you be oh so very careful, Master. I am too valuable and well crafted to perish at the hands of ineptitude.
And finally, the best games encourage empathy. Just like in the movies, the best characters have realistic flaws that make them relatable. In another article we've linked below, Michelle Sabar explains how great design requires variation. Heroic characters shouldn't be perfect at everything they do, funny characters shouldn't constantly crack jokes, and tough guy characters should rarely shout. He likens this to only eating fast food. It's delicious at first, but it'll quickly grow monotonous. Adding flaws is a crucial component of engaging storytelling, and this technique is most effectively used when the flaw is interwoven into the story. Yakuza's Kazuma Kiryu, for example, is slightly naive and idealistic, and because of this, he often ends putting himself in danger in order to help his friends or to adhere to a code of honor. Of course, it also helps that he's harder than reinforced concrete and is able to punch his way out of danger. But he's a more interesting character because it's his personality that causes most of his problems. And one final note about empathy. It's entirely possible to make your characters too realistic. In a recent article on Polygon, senior character artist Cam Yu explained how this was the case when designing Lara Croft for Rise of the Tomb Raider. The team captured Camilla Luddington's performance precisely, but discovered that Lara began to take on too many human qualities. This made her seem less like the video game icon she is and more like a real person, and strangely, this detracted from her intrinsic qualities as a video game character. It's an interesting lesson, and one that informs us about the future of character design. We're already approaching a point where we can make video game characters almost look real. But there's something about the expressive animated design of something like Overwatch that feels more comfortable to watch than, say, Sean Ashmore's performance of Jack Joyce in Quantum Break.
Going too fast for you?
And if you don't believe me, this is how Mario would look if he was a real person. You enjoy those nightmares. And there you go, why not let us know who your favourite video game characters are in the comments below and exactly why you love them. And as ever, remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and hit subscribe for more videos just like this one. Thank you very much for watching.